All right. Sorted. Well, welcome everyone to this session on leadership. Now, leadership development program. We've changed it from leadership training program because Paul sent me through a great article about the difference between training and development. And I believe this is more development. This isn't just rote training at all. Because with the development, there's an interaction, and people have got to, it's about individuals, it's about people rather than roles. So, yeah, thank you, Paul. Now, this one is about influence for leaders, and I'm quite excited about this one because even in just preparing for this one, I found incredibly valuable for myself. I've studied influence a lot in the past, but I hadn't reread it, any of the books, for quite a while. And just going back through it, I really found it valuable because there's some things there. And the thing about influence is that it's really actually quite simple. It's also very powerful, and it's worth being something that I think you keep revisiting and mastering, because I think as leaders, it's something that's absolutely critical. And the reason for that is, let me see if we can. I don't have any. Oh, she's mounting the mouse. So, the thing about leadership is that I'm going to jump straight to the bottom. I think it's about actually an effective leader gets people to want to do something, doesn't force them to do something. And I think that's where influence comes into it. Some people, I think when you talk about influence, they have a sort of a negative connotation, and it's about manipulating people, or it's about underhanded tactics to get people to do what you want them to do. And I don't look at it that way at all. You can use influence in that way, absolutely. But I think effective influence is actually where you can get someone to see an outcome and have them actually want to do it themselves, so that they are engaged, they're on board, and they're actually wanting to achieve what needs to be achieved. And I think that's what I want to share about today. And I want you to keep in mind today that that's what we're focusing on. We're not thinking about how you can actually get people to do things that they don't want to do. It's about helping people to want to do things. This book is a great book, Strategies for Taking Charge. And it talks about the difference between managing and leading. And it's, we've talked about the differences in the past, and this is another sort of take on it, which I thought was really good. Managing is to bring about, to accomplish, to have charge of, or responsibility for, to conduct. Whereas leadership is about influencing, guiding in direction, course, action, and opinion. And the interesting thing there is it talks about influencing in leadership. I think it's essential to both leadership and management, regardless of which way you're coming at it. Some people are in management positions here, and everyone is in a leadership position. Regardless, influence is critical. As I said, it's getting people to want to do things without having to actually control them. And I think that's the core of today. And the beauty of it is, it's actually quite simple. So, what are we going to cover today? We're going to talk about what is influence, and then something I looked at, which I sort of, in reading up about it and studying this, came up with macro influence and micro influence, and the difference between the two. And I think for effective leadership, they're actually both necessary, and they're both powerful in their own way. One's more in a big picture way, and one is more on a day-to-day influencing type of way. And then I want to talk about integration, because obviously any of this stuff is absolutely of no use unless you actually integrate it into your life. So influence, I've talked a bit about it already. It's about helping people to want to do what needs to be done to get the best outcome. And I think that's my definition of influence. And I think it's really simple. And to me, as I said, it's not about manipulation. And the key in this, the key is intent. So do you have an intention to help them get a good outcome? Do you have an intention to help them, to do things that are going to help progress the organisation or the team or whatever? But it's really, what are you trying to do here? Or is your intent to manipulate someone to do something that you want them to do for your own benefit? And that's the key. So does anyone have any thoughts around influence, or in terms of the definition, or any questions around it, or just any comments at this point before we crack into I think some really fundamental ways that you can apply influence to achieve good outcomes? No? It's pretty simple really, isn't it? But I think the key is that it's not a bad thing, it's actually a critical thing to be an effective leader. So, we talked about the macro there and the micro, and that we're going to cover. Macro to me is about overall direction, whereas micro is specific interactions. So if you think about what we talk about with macro as let's get people moving in the same direction, and then micro is how do you influence them when they're all moving in the same direction. So on a macro level, I think influence in an organisation really comes back to that leadership in terms of vision, mission and strategy. It's that overall umbrella. It's that where are we going as an organisation or as a team, and then being able to align people in that common direction. The key with this stuff is it gives people, I think, a framework in which to focus their energy. And so they can focus their energy in a direction that we're all going in. It gives people clarity. Like, people obviously want to know where we're going, what direction the team's going in. And then, because people, I think, generally want to put their best foot forward. They actually want to do their best, and you give them the tools to be able to do it. So, you know, it also, by focusing their energy, it helps people prioritise in the right direction. And I think a key part of this macro stuff is leading by example and setting the standard. So it's actually being that person, it's living that vision, it's living that mission, and actually, you know, bringing people in, engaging people and bringing them on board with it. So, I mean, I've got a quick question. You don't have to say it out loud, but put your hands up. In Australia, I can see through the phone lines. You know, maybe we did the session on the characteristics of leadership. Who went away and with their team created a vision for their specific team or division?
Yeah. No, I don't know. Kind of.
Kind of. I mean, I think that this is one thing that I think is critical. And I think that, you know, the people who are going to get the most out of this, but more importantly, I think, as leaders, it's the people who are going to get the most for their team are the people who are going to go away and do this. So we're going to talk about that vision at the end, because I think in terms of influencing people, that's one of the core things. There are characteristics, there are traits that you can excel at as a leader, and the vision is something that's tangible for your team. So I'm really going to encourage you at the end, we're going to talk through the vision, because I think that's the macro leadership. We've got that as a company, and each division, each team has got their own specifics, their own vision, their own mission that they're trying to achieve. And I think that that's really powerful to have what's in common, and also to celebrate what's actually different about each department or division, because we all contribute different levels towards the same thing. So on a macro level, it's about engaging people and moving them in the same direction. And I think the reason, now this is something I hadn't read in any of the books, but I believe if you don't have this level, then the other stuff is kind of band-aids. And you know, it's more sort of kicking someone back in a direction, but they're not actually going necessarily in the right direction. Whereas if you've got the macro and they're kind of moving, it's like when you're in an aeroplane. Not that any of us here are pilots, but if you're flying from, say, Auckland to Los Angeles, the plane is off course 99.9% of the time, and it's making little corrections all the way, and ultimately you're off course most of the time, but you land in Los Angeles because they've got a vision, because they've got a direction. The macro stuff, I think, of influence is about creating that vision, that direction, so that while you might be off course 99% of the time, the micro parts of leadership are the parts that can keep you back on track, and ultimately you'll end up in Los Angeles and you don't end up in Guatemala. So, I mean, although if you try and get to Guatemala, that's fine too. I've got nothing against Guatemala. So that's, I think, the big stuff. We'll talk about at the end the vision for each division. And then there's the micro stuff. As I said, this is that course correction. This is that helping influence people on a day-to-day basis. And I think the authority on influence is Robert Cialdini and his book, Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion. This is a must-read book for anyone who wants to master influence, and it's even more so of a must-read book for anyone who's in sales, because he is the authority, and like all other books, you know, I haven't read all the other books, but most other books sort of draw from what he did. I think he's accepted as the authority on persuasion. And I'm going to go through his 6 principles today, and I'm going to do it in quite a simple way. And I actually think that in a simple way, it's really effective, because the concepts are so simple that you can easily apply them. So the 6 principles of influence are reciprocity, commitment and consistency, social proof, authority, liking, and scarcity. Now these are all quite different ones, and they're really easy to apply individually or as a group. And generally you're going to be applying more than one in any given situation. So, reciprocity. Who here has ever been at the airport and you had a Hare Krishna come up to you and give you a flower or give you a book or something? Or somewhere had someone come up and give you something like that. And they're like, I don't want anything for it. But if you want to make a donation, who here has taken the book and then not made a donation? As human beings, we're hardwired to repay debts. So if you owe someone something, we're hardwired to want to repay that. And you know, I think it's because we feel uncomfortable about being indebted to someone for something. You know, this is the kind of the core principle of reciprocity. You give to get. You give someone what you want. I think the key with using it as a leader is to identify what objectives you have and actually what you want from the other person, and then identify what you can give them. So it's what do you give them, knowing that you're going to need something back from them as well. And I think an example of this would be is, you know, if you help a team member out when they're busy. So you've all got teams. If you help them out and or go above and beyond and go that extra mile to help them achieve their objectives, then they're going to feel a lot more obliged to support your objective of creating a vision for that team. If you're the type of leader who never gives anything to your team, and then you say, right, now we're going to do the team vision, they're just going to be like, well, I don't know you anything. So this is a really simple way. It's like give to get. And you can use it, you know, if you've got something that you know you're going to ask someone, it's what can you give them beforehand that actually means that, you know, it's a value to them. It's not manipulation. And what you want from them is actually going to help them too. So it's all done with a good intent. So this is the first one, reciprocity. You know, we're hardwired for this one. And I mean, who's experienced that? You know, when you owe someone something, it's so hard to say no when you owe someone something, isn't it? So it's a great way to use it to influence. The second pillar of influence is commitment and consistency. And this is the great one. As human beings, we have a deep desire, a need to feel consistent. You know, once we're committed to something, we are much more inclined to go along with it. So, you know, this is something that I've learned, you know, by trial and error throughout the business. That when you engage with a team, when you engage with people, people have a lot more buy-in along the way, and they're much more likely to support the initiative ultimately. The other part of that as well is you get much better ideas from the people who are at the front line, the people who are touching the customers, who are there day to day. But beyond that, in terms of influence, if they're engaged and you've been getting their commitment throughout it, then they're so much more likely to support the initiative. So you know, it can be as simple as just asking, you know, are you on board with this? And getting a yes. It may be actually a written commitment, but getting that commitment along the way, I look at it as something like it's kind of like if you're trying to get from here to here, each commitment kind of raises the fallback bar, and then you get into this level and you get commitment. And so people, they make a commitment, they take a step, and they're much less likely to go back. You know, just asking someone, can I count on you for this? And if they say yes, they are more likely to do it than just saying, okay, we're going to create a vision for the team, and can you guys go away and do it? Because we're going to create visions for the team. Can I count on you all to go away and do that?
Yes.
Thank you, Paul. So Paul's probably going to go and create a vision for the team. But you know, but actually getting that, because the thing about making a commitment is people then think about it, make a judgment call, make a decision, and make a commitment at the time. And so it helps them to move through a process as well. Because if you don't get commitment, that means you haven't really decided on anything. So I think it's a really important way so people know where they stand, and also if they can also have an opportunity to go, no. So it's like, okay, you don't want to do that. Well, that's okay. That might be fine. What other ways can we approach this? You know, there's more than one way to skin a cat, but how can we come at this from a different angle? But making someone actually think about it. And I think an important part of this is, you know, making sure someone has the space to say no if they don't think they can do it. You know, but if they say yes, then there's a commitment. They're going to want to stay consistent with that. Let's just come back to this. So, social proof. This is a great one because this is where people relying on the kind of that safety in numbers thing. So if someone else is doing it, we assume it's okay to do it. You know, it's that kind of the herd mentality. If everyone's going in that direction, well, I'm much more comfortable to go in that direction. You know, some people want to stand out and be different and be the pioneer. A lot of people don't. A lot of people are much more comfortable if, hey, someone's done it before, I know it's going to work. So leading by example fits into here as well, because if you've done it before, you give that social proof. You can bring that certainty to people. Social proof is about giving certainty to people. You know, if someone's uncertain, this is an area that you really want to work on with them, because might be something that, hey, you've got a new phone call script, you may have a new way of using a tool that we've got, CRM or whatever, and it's like, this is really working well for people, but someone's like, I just don't know if it's going to work for me. If you can give them that proof, if you can give them that evidence, that body of evidence, that's what this is, then they're going to feel much more confident, much more certain about actually using it. So, you know, that's what I said, if there's a new process, and you can be the person who goes away and uses it first, and then comes back and goes, hey, this is really good, I've used it, Paul's used it, and we've both actually found that we've, you know, increased our efficiency in this area by 25%, then someone's going to go, okay, well, you've tried it before, you've kind of trodden that path before me. And I think that the key about this is it's almost like creating the trodden path, creating the path that people are more comfortable being on. So it's a great way, and it's a really simple one to use. You know, from a marketing perspective, this is where testimonials come in. This is where, you know, in you know, giving you know, putting real-time feedback up. You know, if we can do that in terms of what are people saying about us, it's giving people that certainty that it's taking away the doubt. I think this is the powerful bit about social proof. And the fourth one is liking. So we're more likely to be influenced by people we like. Simple as that. It's not a must for influence, but if you look at like in different ways, you could look at it as, you know, being, you know, having that similarity to someone, being that familiarness to someone. You know, in sales you call it rapport, so it's finding that common ground, because we like people like us. We're more comfortable with people like us. You may have nothing in common with the person, but there's always something you can compliment about someone else. There's always something, I believe, that you can learn from any single person. So, you know, finding that and being genuine about it, because if there's something you can pay someone a compliment and mean it, then, you know, they're going to be more likely to like you. Trust, you know, this is key as well. So you may be totally different, but if they trust you, that's a form of liking you. So I think if you can find a way to make sure that, you know, if you think about like in terms of make a connection with someone. So that's, I think, a different way of looking at like, is how can you form that bond with them? Is it because you've got something in common? Is it because you pay them a compliment that you genuinely mean? Is it because, you know, you do something and you fulfill an obligation or you fulfill a promise to them and they trust you? If you've got that connection, then you're much, much more likely to be able to influence them. But the caveat is, don't try too hard to be liked, because people can tell. You know, be genuine. So it's not necessarily about being liked, it could be about being trusted. You know, whatever it is, I think the difference with this is, you know, my sort of take on this, my distinction around this, it's liking goes beyond liking, and it's just forming a connection, of a real human connection with someone. You know, we've all experienced that. We make decisions sometimes because we have a connection with someone that we know there is a better option for us, but we'll still make that decision because we've got that connection. You know, and I think that connection as well is related to reciprocity. Because if you feel an obligation to, you feel good about this person, you want them to feel good about the connection as well. So this is a really simple one, and it's a really powerful one too. The fifth way to influence people is authority. As people, we feel a sense of duty or obligation to people who are in authority. And, you know, I think this is one that there are certain ways you can do this. You know, there's job titles, there's how you dress. Accessories are a way to gain authority, you know, having the coolest car or gadget. But I think if you look at, I mean, those are quite, those do influence people. So I think being aware of those is great, it's important. And I think the ones that are much more powerful, the ones that, you know, there is a lot more integrity to them, is acting professionally and being the expert. So actually being a position of authority because you're that good at what you do. A position of authority because you give that much value to other people is infinitely more powerful than a position of authority because you've got a cooler job title or a bigger flashy car. I think being aware of them is important. You know, and this is, you know, where the whole you know, dress. I heard someone say, you know, dress for the job that you want. So you know, that's just part of it. You know, the authority side of things. You're more likely to influence someone because people do make judgment calls, obviously, very superficially. But I think that the more important ones are that professional and the expert. So, you know, an example of this I was thinking about, you know, with a team, if you want to influence someone and get them on board, is if you can demonstrate your knowledge and share with them your experience and your knowledge and actually help them to see that they can get those results and see those results in advance, and actually then experience those, you're much more likely to be able to influence them as their leader than if you aren't able to do that. If they see themselves as more knowledgeable than you, as better at their jobs than you, then it can be quite much more difficult to influence them. So I think this is a really important one, and be aware of the baubles side of things. The flashy pants and the cool car, but really be connected to the important stuff. The professional, the expert, and adding more value to people. And then the fifth one is scarcity. We all know that things are more attractive when their availability is limited. As soon as you get the potential that you may not be able to have it, who here finds that their desire goes up? You want what you can't get. There are all sorts of ways to do this. And I think this is one that can be really effectively used externally, particularly in terms of marketing. Scarcity is one that's really commonly used. Limited time, limited number, the terms could be changing. You've got a week to be able to actually get in at this rate or whatever it is. And it can be used internally as well. But remember, this has got to be done with integrity again. This has actually got to be, this is not like I'm going to take it away because I can, because I think that will undermine trust. But it could be that, and you could use this one in terms of highlighting the urgent consequences of a problem if your idea isn't adopted. So it's like, all right, we've got this opportunity here, and for whatever reason, vacancies are getting filled quicker. So this way of doing things is going to speed things up for you, and it's going to affect your pipeline or your ability to actually place doctors if you don't actually get this flywheel spinning, and start using this and getting people in. So it's like, it's not necessarily you've only got a week to be able to use it, because that's not true. But the longer you leave it, the harder it's going to get. So creating that sense of urgency, I think, is a way of using scarcity to influence team members. So as I said, throughout the whole talk today, I've talked about integrity a lot. And I think this is really important with influence, because these are very powerful tools. As we know from the Hare Krishnas who give you a book, it's almost impossible to then not give them a donation. So you can use this. You can use this in an underhanded way, but and I believe motive matters. So using it in a way that you're trying to do good for them, you do good. So it's almost like it's good for you, it's good for them, it's good for the greater good. If it answers those three things, then fantastic, use it. Because if you look at this as a leader, your good reputation takes a long time to build, and it can take seconds to destroy it. So you can manipulate someone into doing something in the short term, and that's never going to do you good in the long term. One thing that I've always approached business with is never sacrifice a short-term gain for a long-term relationship. And I think if you use influence in an underhanded way, you can make things happen in the short term, but it's never going to do you good in the long term. And I think as leaders, your reputation, how people look at you, the trust that they have in you, is one of your most important assets. And so this is where you've got to use this one really, really carefully. And also use it, use it to actually help people, help other people, help the organisation, help yourself. So I think it's a really important one. So before we go on to the next part, I've covered, there are six, well, I'll go here because I've got it in front of us now. There are 6 ways you can influence. There's the macro way, which is creating that vision, and there are 6 ways. Does anyone have any questions around that? I'm going to go through some ideas about how I think it could be applied with your teams and with yourself for your development over the next month and the coming months and years. But before we do that, does anyone have any questions, comments, or thoughts? I'm very keen to hear it. So I'll open up New Zealand first. Do you guys have any questions, comments, or thoughts? No?
I'd actually say, when you're talking about the being liked thing and integrity, the thing that keeps coming to mind for me is respect, and I think that is probably really key, and that's how you're going to be able to influence people. If they respect you and what you're doing and your decisions, then you should get results. Yep.
And respect comes into that light, it comes into authority.
Yeah, and trust.
It bridges many of those. And I think, respect is absolutely integrity linked to integrity.
Yes. Yeah.
So, I agree with you. Yeah. I think it's more important to be respected than liked. And you can't demand respect, you can only deserve it.
Yeah.
So, great point. What about Australia? Any questions, comments, or thoughts?
I just think everything that you put up today is so valuable. I've never been part of a team that goes through this process. I think it's excellent.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Maxine, and welcome, Maxine, to you. The first Maxine just joined us today, as we all know. So good to have you on board. So thank you, Maxine.
Thanks.
Any other questions, comments, thoughts from anyone? No.
I just think that the lead by example part is such a valuable tool because it really creates a lot of what you're talking about. So it creates the trust and showing them what needs to be done or what wants to be done. So they should hopefully want to do that for you as well. So I think that's probably one of the main points I've gotten out of it so far.
Fantastic. I mean, it goes through all of the points really. And it's related to the trust, it's related to the integrity. The funny thing is, the conversation now is often it's not about the 6 points. Well, not often, we've only done it once, but it's not about the 6 points. And it is when I was reviewing this, what kept coming back to me was integrity, was respect, was leading by example. And, all of these things can be, it's like if you're going to use them for good, then you're going to have those 3 things along with them as well. If you're going to use them to manipulate, then you're probably not going to have integrity, respect, or trust, or leading by example necessarily. You can manipulate people to get things done, but it's never going to do good in the long term. So all of this stuff, none of this stuff is an island when used effectively. It's all used in conjunction with with what we've talked about before, which is those characteristics of leadership.
And I think as well, if you use it as a whole as well, which is with our doctors and everything, if you're kind of living that integrity, it reflects in your job as well as your team.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, this is great stuff to use, with doctors or with clients. Again, coming from that place of integrity, it's like, if there's a position obviously for a doctor, and it's going to be good for them, it's going to reach their outcomes, but they just don't know because they've never been there before, then social proof might be a great way to do it. It's like, it's not about manipulating to go there, it's just saying, hey, we've had these other doctors go there who loved it, why don't I put you in touch? You can have a chat. So it's actually, that would be a perfect example of using it to help someone get a good outcome. It's not trying to manipulate them into doing something they don't want to do.
The application of this stuff is pretty much infinite, isn't it, really?
Absolutely.
With what we're doing, what you do at home, in your life, outside of work, and what you do in work, it's so relevant.
Absolutely. And it comes back to that, if you're doing it for someone else's good, that servant leader type thing, then this is powerful stuff. And it's powerful in a good way.
Getting to that point where you can camouflage it as well. So it's not, you're not trying too hard like you said earlier.
Yeah.
You just, it comes naturally, you're emanating all of this naturally, and that's so much more believable, and it's so much easier to build that trust if you're just doing it, without having to think about it after a while.
Absolutely, getting unconsciously conscious, unconsciously confident in it. And I think if you think about it, if you go through the 6 things, we all use it in some way. Becoming cognizant of it means that we can use it more effectively. And it means we can maybe be say we're in a situation and going, well, I'm doing this and we're not getting the results, or the team's not buying into this. All right, well, what could I actually use here to help them get over the line, because it's a good thing. It's going to do them good. So it's coming from that servant leader, that how can I help them to get where they need to go? These are tools to help you do that. So I think the first part of this, in terms of integrating this, is to actually make a decision and to say, okay, influence is something that is important to me as a leader, and I'm committed to mastery of it. And I think it's one of those ones that's going to serve anyone. I know it's going to serve anyone beyond work in their life, as you said, Paul. Like it's going to serve you in all facets of your life, and it's an area that I don't think has to be complicated. There are so many books on it, so you can make it complicated, or you can go, all right, I'm going to look at it from a macro level and a micro level, and I'm going to master these 6 things, or I'm just going to start using them. That if anything's worth doing, it's worth doing badly. So just starting to use it. And just saying, okay, what am I using here? What could I use? All right, I'm going to ask a big thing from this person, and I know I'm going to ask them in a week's time. What can I do now so that they're going to feel more likely to say yes? Reciprocity. So I think the decision is the first one. And when you send your feedback through after this one, I'd like you to include whether you made that decision or not. I'm not going to tell you have to make it. But if everyone actually, I mean, actually, why don't we do that in terms of, rather than wait till the end of the month this time around, is, today or tomorrow, send me an email if you've made that decision after the session. Because, if you make that decision, and this is one of those, making a verbal commitment to something, you're more likely to follow through. So let's start using it. So is everyone happy to send me either yes or no?
Yep.
And I'm not going to tell you have to do it. Is everyone happy to do that?
Yep.
Excellent. Well, that'll be fantastic. The first part, I think, of this in terms of influence is that macro. And I think this is so important, particularly as you all know we're rolling out the new brand. And the brand has been based on, we've got a lot of social proof because we've gone to the doctors and hospitals so many times. We've gone to the team so many times. Like, we've gone interacted to get to where we needed to be. And the influence from the doctors, from the hospitals, from the GP practices, and from the team, those 4 groups of stakeholders, has got us to a point where I think we've got something really, really good. And I'm excited about it. And we're going to need to, there's going to be a lot of things in terms of getting people on board with the new brand, with learning the new CRM, and everything that goes with change. So this is going to be really powerful for it. And I think within that, I think having, we've got, as a company, we've got a vision. As a company, we've got a mission, we've got a strategy. I think if you can do that with your team, and within this context of a new brand and all the things that are going to go with it, pick a medic and everything, is to create that vision for your team. And and again, if it's worth doing badly. I reckon just do it. Just if that's what you want to do. And I'd encourage you to do that. I've found, obviously with a vision, is when you have a vision that's actually clear and spoken and people understand it, people are much more likely to go in the same direction. I think is everyone happy to do that with their teams? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Excellent. Australia?
Yeah.
Excellent. So I appreciate that. Who can point out the parts of influence I used in that conversation then?
Is everybody happy with that?
What was that, Australia? You can point some out first.
Verbal commitment.
Verbal commitment, absolutely. You know what I will throw in there is if you want to run it by me, or if you want my just thoughts about it, then feel free anyone just to set up a time to Skype me or come and meet me personally. Because I would like to do that for you. And I'm genuine.
So wait, I wasn't the question.
Thank you so much.
The thing is, I'm
I feel like
genuine.
I need to repay the favour.
I hope you do.
God, I'm burdened
But
by this.
the thing about that, I was thinking about that then, and it's like, well, actually, I would like to do that. So I wasn't saying that in a way that's like, I want to motivate you to do it, but I'm happy to do that. So that's just if you want to do it. What's really interesting, actually, at the end of I was at the Queenstown Resort College graduation the other day, and Sir Ian Edgar spoke as chairman of the board there. And at the end he said, one thing that I I have focused on in my life is make sure that everyone always owes me a favour. And he is, the thing about Eon is he's been so helpful with me in business and in all sorts of things. And then, the other day when he sent me a letter saying, can you become a patron of the Winter Games? It's like, well, I haven't got to. I haven't got time to go to any of the events, but I will become a patron of the games because I owe him something. Reciprocity is so powerful. It's really important. So if we will create the visions, and as I said, come back to me if you've got questions, or just you want to run it by it, or even if you just want to have a conversation about how we're going to go about this with the team. I'd suggest that you sort of just sit down with the team and say, okay, what is our ultimate vision for this team? Who do we ultimately want to be? Not who do we want to be in the next week, but say in a year's time, who do we want to be? If we're a division within the company, how do we want to be performed? Where do we want to be within this company? And what are we going to do for our clients? And just create that, and then just hammer it out. It's great to keep a vision, I think, really simple. And one thing as well that I think is great is if you look at from a vision, you can look at what we do. So what we do is kind of for us, for example in MedRecruit, it's we match hospitals and doctors. That's what we do. How do we do it? That's the next level up. Okay, we focus on the doctors' lifestyle, financial and career needs to create the best synergy between them and the hospital so that they enjoy their placement and they have long-term success in it, and the hospital gets better retention. That's kind of the how we do it. The why is the top level, which is to enrich lives. We know it's going to enrich the doctor's life, it's going to enrich the hospital staff's lives, it's going to enrich the patient's lives, it's going to enrich our lives as well. So, look at it from those different levels. What, how, why, and just come up with something. And then refine it over time. Because as anyone who's been in this company for a while can see, our vision has been refined over time to be where it is. And it's a process. Master the micro areas of influence. And what I'd suggest with this one is you just put 2 up a week. Or you might, who knows, you might be, you're the overachiever and you go, I'm going to put all 6 in front of me, I'm just going to start using them. But the key, I think, with this one is to actually have them in front of you and go, okay, what am I going to use? How am I going to use these? What am I going to master? How am I going to master reciprocity? How am I going to master consistency and commitment? How am I going to master social proof, authority, liking and scarcity? And then just, make sure that I believe that, as humans, we're good at focusing on, 2 or 3 things. So I'd suggest you do 2 or 3 a week and actually really integrate them. And then, maybe you do that for the first week, 3, second week, 3, and then third week, you're really focusing on all 6 of them. So I really encourage you to do that because, again, this is absolutely not completely useless, but not far off it if you don't use it. I'm going to be doing the same thing because, to me, as I said, preparing for this was so valuable. Just attaching myself to this influence, from a place of actually helping people get what they want. The fourth part of this is just assess your results and adjust your approach. So sometimes you might go, oh, that was a bit manipulative, or that felt a bit manipulative. The intent is the important part, but you might go, oh, that felt like it wasn't very elegant. I think elegance is an important part of influence. So maybe you just adjust your approach. And then just constant and never-ending improvement. So as a leader, we have to influence people, we have to influence them effectively, and we want to constantly be improving our ability to influence. I think that, and I think anyone in this leadership program is committed to mastery. And I think the thing about mastery is that if you can master an area of your life, you've got that for life, as long as you keep improving it. Because if you just leave something, it's going to go down. But if you master areas of your life, that's where you can get real quantum leaps, I think, in your ability to create the life you want, to create the life that other people want. As opposed to if you dabble in something and go, okay, cool, influence, I'm going to do this, and you do it for a week or 2, and then just forget about it. It'll be of some use, but it will be infinitely more use if you go, this is an area I want to master. And that's how I've focused in my life. And there's a lot of areas I'm working on mastering. But when you master them, and you've got a springboard for the next thing you want to do. If you dabble, it's kind of like 1 step forward, 1 step back. There's this little Buddhist dance. It's kind of related, it's sort of not, but I want to show it to you anyway. And it goes, you can't see it in Australia, but a 2 step forward, 1 step back. And I think this is quite a good one that's related to this. Whereas if you dabble, it's like 1 step forward, 1 step back, have a little dance, just sort of move around. That's dabbling, I think, and that's what most people do in life. But if you're going 2 steps forward, 1 step back, that to me is like I want to master something, and it's not going to be perfect. So if it's worth doing badly, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and then 2 steps forward. Ultimately, that makes progress. And I think that is the way to make progress, because you're never going to make progress from just striding off. If you are, then it's probably too easy. But I think that's kind of the way to approach this. So does anyone have any questions about it at this point? Cool. Alright, again, I think this is really simple, and it's so effective. And the thing about it, while it's simple, people do use it, but it's uncommon, I think, for people to master this. And I think if you can master it, it's an area of your life that is going to take you ahead in quantum leaps, not just little ways. So I think this is one of the most important parts of the leadership program. And I think it's so important that at some point I want to teach these principles to the team in our monthly personal development. And I was going to do it next month, but because we're doing the new brand, I think there's a lot going on, so it'll probably be a bit later down the track. But I think this is really cool stuff. So you better get really good at it and get really elegant at it before the rest of the team knows what you're doing. That's kind of what I'm saying. So I gotta get my thing working, don't I? So I want to leave you with this last one. Think twice before you speak, because your words and influence will plant the seed of either success or failure in the mind of another. And I think that's so true when it comes to influencing your team. So think about this stuff. Become cognizant of the 6 areas of influence. and then use it consciously and develop those skills, hone your ability to use it, so that ultimately you become unconsciously competent in it. But beyond unconscious competence is that awareness, and that's where you can use it unconsciously. You can use it very well, but you can also use it in an aware type of way where you can actually say, this is what I need to use at this point, this is what I need to use at this point. You become elegant at it and you can integrate it. So, that's what I wanted to leave you with today. I think this is really powerful stuff. I think this is so important, and I think it's going to be something that's going to serve you all in, right now and in the years to come. So, thank you very much.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Sam. Awesome.
It's awesome.
All right, Australia, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll catch up with you guys soon.
Bye.
Adios.